So you want to make a crescent zipper pouch. This is a tutorial that will walk you through how you can make all three sizes. I will walk you through the medium, and of course it's the same for all three. However, there are two different ways that you can actually add a zipper. You can use zipper tape or you can use a regular zipper, but if you are using a regular zipper, I have a few things that you need to know. So throughout this tutorial, when I get to the zipper portion, I will pause and I will switch to the regular zipper so that I can tell you everything you need to know about that one as well before we continue and finish up our crescent zipper pouch. Now, the one thing that you are going to need for this tutorial is the printed pattern, and I will have this printed pattern linked in the description down below. Now, if you don't want to buy any patterns at this moment in time, that's totally fine. I highly recommend that you check out my trio of regular zipper pouches, as that is a free tutorial. I will have it linked in the description down below. All right, why don't we get sewing? You will need fusible fleece batting, quilted cotton for your outer layer, and quilted cotton for your inner layer, as well as the pattern, which I will have linked in the description down below, and the pattern does come in all three sizes. And then finally, you will also need some zipper tape. Now, if you choose to do a regular zipper, it will have to be an extra long regular zipper, and I will show you when we get to the zipper stage how you can add either zipper tape or an actual zipper. So the first thing you need to do is prep your outer fabric. So grab your fusible fleece, and then following your fusible fleece instructions, fuse your outer fabric to your fusible fleece. You will see on the fusible fleece that there will be a rough glue side. Make sure that glue side, of course, is facing your fabric, and if it extends past your fabric, make sure your iron goes nowhere near that fusible fleece because you don't want that glue to end up on your iron. Then it is time to quilt that panel. Now you can quilt it however you wish, but the way that I like to quilt it is by just drawing 1-inch spaced lines across the entire panel. I like to use a Hera marker for this. It just imprints a line into the fabric instead of having to draw a line. You could also use any other water-soluble marking pen that you choose. I will have a few of those options linked in the description down below for you. You'll take this to your sewing machine, and when I quilt my lines, I like to use a top stitch length of 3 millimeters. Next, it's time to fold that panel in half, line up your pattern along the folded edge, clip it in place, and you will cut 2 of these pattern pieces out of your quilted panel. Then you will move on to your lining fabric and you will cut another 2 of these pattern pieces out of your lining fabric, remembering to do the same thing and lay that pattern piece along a folded edge. Then from your lining fabric, you will also cut 2 pieces of fabric that will work for your binding, and then 2 more pieces of fabric that will work for your pull tabs. Next, lay your 2 lining pieces right sides together, clip along that straight edge, and then lay your 2 quilted panel pieces together, right sides together, clip along that straight edge, and you will take both of these to your sewing machine and you will sew a 1/2-inch seam allowance across that bottom edge. You can start and stop with a back stitch. Take your pieces to your iron and just give those seams a quick press open. Then you'll take them back to your sewing machine and sew a top stitch across all 4 of those edges, holding them down nice and tidy. As you can see here, those flaps have been sewn down and it just looks so nice. I love how this lining looks when all is said and done. Moving on, we need to prep our pull tabs. So you'll fold them in half, and then you'll tuck those raw edges in towards that 1/2-inch fold. Then clip along that folded edge, and you will bring this back to your sewing machine and sew a top stitch along both long edges. Oh, and another thing that might be helpful for you is to start maybe a centimeter into that seam and then back stitch towards the corner and then go forward again. I find that helps my sewing machine not eat up that corner when I'm trying to get started. Then fold those pull tabs in half, just trim away the extra threads, and you'll line it up along that sewn seam, clipping it in place, and then just with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew those pull tabs in place. Now, I think in my pattern, I actually show you this step later on, but when I was doing my practice runs, I realized I always forgot this step. So doing this step a little bit earlier just makes sure that you have not forgotten, but you can also add it later on when my pattern says to do so. Now, before we add our zipper tape, this step is optional, but I find it super helpful. I like to use this double-sided tape, and I just run it along the top edge. Now, if you're using a thinner zipper, then something like this zipper tape could end up sticking out past your zipper. If that's the case, just have it stick out a little bit past the outer edge of your fabric. That way it won't show once your zipper has been attached. So when you're cutting your zipper tape, make sure that you're leaving a good 2 inches on either side of the panel because you need that extra space to add your actual zipper pull later on. Then take your zipper, lay it face down, and open it up. Now, I like to make sure that it stays face down in this exact direction. That way I don't forget how it has to attach on both sides. Then you'll take the top piece and you will line it up along the edge of your quilted panel. I like to start in the middle and then I'll just lay it all the way around those curves. And that's where the double-sided zipper tape helps. But if you don't have the zipper tape, that's okay. Just clip it in place. Then you'll clip the other side of your zipper tape in place as well, following the exact same method. Now, it's at this point, if you've never done anything like this, you can take this to your sewing machine and even with a basting stitch, just attach it in place. That way you're not worried about anything moving around when you have to add your lining on top of that. But that is an optional step that is unnecessary if you're used to sewing zippers. Quick interruption here. I am very curious to know what you're planning on using your Crescent zipper pouches for. Let me know in those comments down below. And of course, if you like this tutorial, please give it that thumbs up because that lets YouTube know that this was a good sewing tutorial. And if you don't want to lose me here on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Now, let's keep on sewing. Then you can grab your lining and you can lay your lining on top. You can use more double-sided zipper tape for this step as well. I find that tape really helps the lining not to shift when you're sewing, but it is an extra unnecessary step. Once you have everything clipped in place, then you will take it to your sewing machine and you will use your zipper foot and you will sew around both of those curved edges. And this is what that will look like once you've sewn your lining and your outer panel together with that zipper inside. Now, before we turn it right side out, just take a pair of scissors and just snip a few little slits in and around those corners to give your panel a little bit more flexibility once it's turned right side out. Then reach on inside and turn your project right side out. I find the easiest way to make sure all of those edges are nice and crisp is to first tug on the zipper teeth to pull that seam nicely, and then I'll take it to my iron and I will very carefully press this flat. Now, I say very carefully because most likely you are using a zipper that has plastic teeth, and you do not want your iron to get anywhere near those plastic teeth. Once you have everything laying nicely, just throw a few pins in there to hold the panel to the lining, and then take it back to your sewing machine and sew a top stitch along both of those outer curves. Now, it's at this point that my pattern does suggest you add those pull tabs, so I'm going to suggest it once again, just in case you have not done that yet. And now it is time to connect our zipper. Now, if you did use zipper tape, this is the time where you will line up your zipper tape and then cut it so that it is even with each other. Then you can add your zipper pull however you feel comfortable. I love using this handy zipper jig, but if you don't have that, I've seen people use a fork, and some people are just really good at doing this without any tools at all. And once you've got the zipper on there, you will pull it so that it sits about halfway. And now it is time to finish those corners. But before we finish those corners, I'm just going to flip on over and show you how I do this with a long zipper. When you're using a zipper, you want the zipper to be quite long. That way it will still be able to follow the entire curvature and lay flat. Fold your zipper in half and mark that 1/2 inch mark on both sides of the zipper tape. Then fold your panel in half, and I'll just finger press on both of those outer edges. That way I can remember where the half mark is on my panel as well. Then with your zipper zipped open, line up those marks that you just made so that your zipper is face down and centered on your panel. And you will clip the zipper in place the same way that I showed you in the previous sample. You will clip the lining on top of that, and you will sew it in place again the same way I showed you in the previous version. And of course, don't forget to add those extra little snips around those corners before you reach on in to turn everything right side out. This is actually my smallest zipper pouch that I'm showing you here. So it is the hardest one to turn right side out, which is why I highly recommend that you make the large or the medium first before moving on to the small. Of course, you will add that top stitch around both of those curves before zipping your zipper up halfway. And as long as your zipper has been pulled so that it is halfway in the center, all of the next steps are going to be the exact same. All right, so back to the original zipper pouch, we have added our zipper pull. It's pulled in about halfway. Now make sure that your lining fabric is face out and just push that zipper tape out and past your opening. Then I like to lay it flat, clip it in place, and you can trim away the excess of the zipper right now if you're comfortable. The opposite side is a little bit more finicky because you want to make sure that your zipper tape is lined up nicely before you clip that in place. And of course, once again, if you're comfortable, you can trim away that excess zipper tape, but you don't have to. You can just take it to your sewing machine. You will sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance across that straight edge. And then from there, you will definitely have to cut away all of the excess at that point. Then grab those 2 little pieces of fabric that you cut for your binding. Lay them so that the raw edges are lined up with the raw edge of your pouch. Clip it in place and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance across that edge. Do that for both sides. Then flip that binding over, fold those side edges in before folding the long edge towards and over your final raw edge. Clip it in place, take it to your sewing machine and sew a top stitch along that edge, holding that binding nicely in place. Do that for both sides. And that will finish up those raw edges beautifully. And another added bonus is I find it gives this bag a little bit of extra structure on the bottom of the bag as well. So turn your project right side out, tuck that binding so that the corners are nice and crisp, and you have got yourself a beautiful crescent bag. And that, my friends, is how you can make a crescent zipper pouch. If you have never made a zipper pouch before and you were just watching to see if you can do it, I promise you can. But if you're not ready and you want to start with a regular zipper pouch, I will have that tutorial linked in the description for you as well. I hope that you guys have a wonderful day, enjoy some sewing, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.